and welcome to a very, very serious video essay that you should absolutely take as the definitive statement and truth on the subject. And that subject? Well, it's High School Musical, a classic Disney original film, and one of the most popular of its kind, and that actually isn't even a joke. The album from the movie topped the US Billboard. The songs here are as popular as, actually famous musicians, like Taylor Swift or Drake. But unlike either of those artists, or unlike them so far, there's a secret hidden message to the film and the songs held therein. A secret message that nobody else has ever been able to decode. Yes, this is the first and only time that you will ever get a chance to finally understand that High School Musical is a socialist story and narrative, one that mirrors the trials and tribulations of the working class, as well as the methodology of the status quo and its protectors, the bourgeoisie and capitalist rulers. I want to prove here today for everyone that it's foolish to go seeking the concepts and ideas of communism in the writings of old fuddy-duddies like Karl Marx or Kropotkin or Lenin. You know what they are? Dead. High School Musical, on the other hand, lives on forever. Well, look, that's enough quibbling. I'm sure you didn't click on this video to hear somebody prose themselves into an early grave. You want the cold, hard facts of the matter, and I want to give them to you. Oh, one last thing before we jump into the actual video essay itself. I would advise waiting till you see the conclusion before making a comment responding to what you assume it will be. And a lot of people like doing that, but seriously, it could save you looking like a right idiot if you just skipped ahead to the conclusion now and then made your comment about how I'm a moron. Just put in a bit of effort, you know?
This could be the start of something new. It feels so right.
So where do we begin? How do we start such a topic as investigating the secretive leftist messaging of a Disney original musical? And there's only one place to truly start, with the start of something new. Fantastic that they literally put a song at the beginning that details the fact that we're witnessing the beginning. Concise and precise. The two things that every audience loves to see. And that start of something new is about the way that when we make connections outside of our own little worlds, we can find new experiences and also discovering new possibilities that seemed impossible before. Now, in our socialist interpretation of this lens, we can see Troy and Gabriella as our representatives of the proletariat, who, upon meeting each other by pure chance and by stepping out of the boundaries of what they would normally be comfortable doing, I mean, they're literally singing on a stage surrounded by people who are, into karaoke. The crowd here is honestly a bit weird. It's a mix of people who are super into watching these randoms sort of nailing a song, but damn, this is one entertained crowd. And while we're here on a tangent, what is with the TVs in the background? There are monitors that are showing the party, just zoomed in on random places and people around the event. Which means someone has video cameras set up for this, and I don't get why. Look, this has nothing to do with the rest of the video essay, it's just really distracting in this opening scene. But from being pushed into performing on this stage, and not knowing one another at all, they form a connection, a bond in this space that allows them to exist outside of the external trappings of class or status that might have ensured they never meet back in the real world of high school. This party at the start is almost like a bubble of freedom, a bubble wherein we see them relieved of the pressures that will come into play later on and put strains upon this relationship. It's like a beautiful dream that they end up waking from.
Gabriella.
This isn't the moment where they gain class consciousness, are walking, talking embodiments of the working class. This is more of the impetus for them to discover that later down the line. It's the trigger moment. It's comparable to the first time that somebody discovers Amazon's work practices, or finds out how much money Elon Musk was worth, or the way that corporations are abusing and using the legal system that we deal with to maximise their profits at the cost of the planet and the very people who make those companies actually be able to exist. It's the pandemic hitting and showing us how badly we treat our essential workers, how the essential workers are so often dismissed as untrained labour, but make society run, so shouldn't they be fairly compensated and able to survive doing the very things that everybody needs? But, much like a real dream, this party is something that they must wake up from. Our proletariats must leave and go back to high school to face the realities of their situation, which is that they belong to different groups, to different established communities that are not supposed to interact with one another, that are not meant to cross over because that would ruin what they have. However, our two protagonists actually are going to the same high school. They wake up and they find one another like immediately. It's like some 1984 shit, I guess. And this continues the path that they had begun of exploring ideas and worlds outside of what the system ordains that they should be. And we also get our first hintings towards one of the villains of the piece, Sharpay, who fears that Gabriella is a potential rival for the parts in the High School Musical, because this isn't just a High School Musical, it's also about there being a High School Musical that people are trying to get into, and like the whole movie is just them building to getting into the High School Musical, which we don't get to see the musical. It's just that was off screen afterwards, presumably. And what we discover is that so far, this whole singing scene has been monopolised by Sharpay and her brother Ryan. Her brother that she seems to mostly drag around with her as some form of nepotism, which is more explored in High School Musical 2, but that's its own story.
They didn't even audition!
Maybe we're being punked. Maybe we're being filmed right now. Maybe we'll get to meet Ashton.
Oh, shut up, Ryan!
What's wrong?
See, Sharpay pushes Gabriella into the Scholastic Decathlon team by anonymously informing the captain, Taylor, of her successes, and hoping that such a thing will keep her occupied and out of Sharpay's hair. This leads us quite nicely into our next song, a song about Troy's distraction from the singing and the music, which in this narrative is an allegory for capital, for the freedom associated with it, for the possibility outside of the artificial restrictions that are heavily reinforced by people like Sharpay who want to maintain their stranglehold on the capital/music and on their place in the social hierarchy of high school, seeing all the cliques as beneficial to that.
I gotta get my head in the game. I gotta get my head in the game.
Get Your Head in the Game is about Troy trying to remind himself of his place, that he is a basketballer and nothing else, and that he needs to focus on that for not just himself, but also his team. Now, a common theme in socialist critique of capitalism is the idea of an opiate of the masses, normally used to refer to religion, a form of structure that encourages those who belong to the working class to keep working in anticipation of reward in the afterlife, that the meek shall inherit the earth, and then it disconnects people from exploring their classes and the social paradigms they exist within, and instead creates these more insular forms of existence. For Troy, basketball is his opiate. That might be the stupidest sentence I think I've ever said. Because he reminds himself of his training, almost like he is repeating a Bible verse. Coach said to fake right and break left. Watch out for the pick and keep an eye on defense. Keep your head in the game and don't think about those distractions like the singing, like Gabriella, because they make you perform worse. They pull you away from this group that you belong with and the group that will reward you with a scholarship after high school if you perform well.
And now we are one game away from taking that championship right back from them. It's time to make our stand. The team is you. You are the team. And this team does not exist unless each and every one of you is fully focused on our goal.
You know, if you lead a good life, free of sin, say your Hail Marys and listen to the priests, pay your tithes and so on, then you will be rewarded for it. The song is Troy reminding himself to keep his head down and to focus on the small world that he has in front of him, rather than consider what might exist beyond those walls that have come around his life. Ignore what your heart is saying. Ignore how this connection with Gabriella has made you realise that you also enjoy the singing too. Forget that dream that you had and get your head in the game. But despite Troy's best efforts to shake this, to let his team inspire him to focus on what's best for his group, Troy has been awoken to possibility now, and so he lets Gabriella bring him over to the musical auditions, allows this path to becoming aware of the life outside of those boundaries of the game to be revealed to him.
That I couldn't see. You were always there beside me.
Now our next song is actually a song and reprise, as we first see Sharpay and Ryan, our previously mentioned villains of the piece, though not the major nor only villains as we will get into later on, performing the song What I've Been Looking For. This song is interspersed with the horrified glances of the composer of the musical, as we watch them watching their baby, their art, get taken away and turned into this insincere and contrived performance, which misses the point of this romantic, subtle piece, and turns it into a pop sensation to the applause and the aplomb of the director, Miss Darbus. Now, what is Miss Darbus, you might ask? What the hell is the drama teacher in this socialist allegory you're trying to sell me on? Is she supposed to be the essence of capitalism? The power at the core of the singing that decides who gets and who doesn't? Almost as if we created a god of wealth who physically manifested the invisible hand of the market? Sure, that works for us here right now. I'm guessing I'll probably change what Miss Darbus is down the line as we see more of her, but for right now, let's pretend that's what it is. As she is taken in by the audition of Sharpay and Ryan, regardless of the fact that it butchers the artist's intentions and makes almost a mockery of their work. We see in this that even the creator of the music, the one who writes and performs it for those to sing to, has no real power here, is merely being used by others as a stepping stone on their own pathway to success. Sharpay and Ryan's What I've Been Looking For is like the ChatGPT version of the song, a soulless interpretation that rips off and fails to really credit or engage with the artist whose efforts allowed it to exist in the first place, as she is replaced by a literal machine performing her part.
What key?
Oh, we had our rehearsal pianist do an arrangement.
And I know the composer, the pianist, is called Kelsey Nielsen. Before you say, wait a minute, you haven't even said her bloody name yet. Do you actually know her name? Are you pretending to know High School Musical? I do know it, okay? Or at least, Wikipedia told me it, and I've got it open over there, so that's good enough. And during this song, I think we see more emphasis on the idea that Ryan is a nepotism baby, or at the very least is viewed as merely a tool for allowing them to perform duets in Sharpay's mindset. She will rise up and she will bring him with her, but he still screws up the choreography that she set up for them and is a little bit of a bumbling idiot. And seeing this performance, working class heroes lose their will a little bit. They waver in their commitment to stepping forward and attempting to audition, as they are intimidated by the fact that this is a system they're unfamiliar with. It's a world designed in such a way that they've not grown up in it, and have no idea how to succeed within it. Much like the way that becoming rich or becoming successful is more available to those who are born and raised in wealth, and have that security of knowledge and finance that those who are poorer do not. Troy can basketball great, and Gabriella can do the sciences well, but neither of them has a history of performance, and the threat of what could happen to them if they perform and fail, the potential social isolation and disgrace that could come with that, keeps them frozen till after the auditions have passed. When our keeper of capital, Miss Darbus, maybe, declares that it is too late, and they miss their opportunity.
Actually, I'm here to sing with her.
Yes, well, we take these shows very seriously here at East High. I called for the pairs audition, and you didn't respond. Free period is now over.
She has an amazing voice.
Perhaps the next musicale.
But they find a back door to the process by collaborating with another of our working class members, Kelsey the composer from earlier on, who drops her notes while leaving and Troy and Gabriella help her out before then performing the song with Kelsey as intended by the artist. Instead of this replication of the emotions of the working class, instead of this facade by Ryan and Sharpay, we get an honest and sincere version of themselves through the song. A song that explores the idea of finding others that you can connect with, that allow you to move beyond the loneliness, and who allow you to be heard and seen. Much as our little group of heroes here are seeing and hearing each other, and Miss Darbus, the invisible hand of the market, I think is what we landed on, even she recognises this and gives them a chance to perform again in a callback audition. Troy and Gabriella have succeeded, you might be thinking. They got seen for their music and they made it. Remember, this isn't about one individual making it, that's the Sharpay story. We're still very early in the movie, there's a lot to go, and what this represents more than anything is the way that capital, like Miss Darbus, will see working class success and honesty, like Troy and Gabriella's, and will try to incorporate it into the system. Yes, they got lucky, luckier than most, and have somewhat made it, but that isn't enough for the film, and it shouldn't be enough for us either. Where the hell am I going with this video essay? Oh, that's right, the next song. So the callback list gets posted, and Sharpay discovers to her chagrin that TNG have made it and are breaking into her world, into what she views as her rightful place. And to Sharpay, success is an independent thing. It's something selfish that cannot be shared, which we get in sense through this song in the way that she constantly keeps overshadowing and cutting off Ryan. Alongside this, Troy also has to deal with the fact that the Wildcats, what team? Wildcats! But yeah, the Wildcats, what team? Wildcats, also find out that he auditioned and are annoyed with him and angry that he is breaking apart their team, that he is hurting the clique that he belongs to. But this begins a wave of other students from various other groups, the jocks, the nerds, the skaters. They all have members who are inspired by Troy breaking the social paradigms and going outside of the expected rules for how each of these groups should act. And they reveal their own secret selves, their own secret desires and wants that are against the modern status quo. A sports person wants to cook, a nerd wants to hip-hop dance, and a guy who clearly does weed likes performing a classical instrument. And all of them are told by their respective groups how they can't do this, how going against the system would potentially be ruinous for reasons that are not quite explained. It's more as if the idea of change itself is scarier than the actual change, and I honestly think we need to talk about each of these choruses in turn, because they change every time. The verse is a person revealing how they want to break the status quo, and the chorus is their group telling them, no, 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 no. The first one is the jocks saying how you should stick to what you know, that if you want to be cool, you don't mess with the flow. For the jocks, they've experienced an element of popularity and success within the system, and rocking the boat might endanger that for them, might stop them from seeming cool. They don't realise that they're also captive birds, born into cages, who tell others to remain shackled because their cage is gilded. Our nerds are up next, as they tell their hip-hop dancer friend that it is better by far to keep things as they are, and I cannot think of a line that better symbolises the essence of capitalism for many, that idea that things could be far worse. Fear is the greatest restrictor for many who are not doing great with how things are, because just imagine what it could be like. Imagine how much worse it could get. I also really want to take a second to talk about the funniest moment I've ever seen, which is when Martha, the nerd/brainiac, exclaims how she loves to pop and lock and jam and break, and one of the other nerds says, "Is that even legal?" That's just incredible writing. And we can also read into that too. Here's our girl expressing how she wants to exist outside the status quo, and one of the main responses is a question about the legality of such an action. Is it even legal to be a socialist? to have class consciousness develop? To start communicating your desires for bettering society by fundamentally changing how things work? Is that legal? Will the CIA come and you off?
Is that even legal?
And that class consciousness is essential to this song, because this is the place where it starts developing. A small thing has happened. A basketballer wants to sing, and suddenly others are realizing that they also don't like how things are done currently, and they want to explore beyond the artificial boundaries around them. The shackles are beginning to bend slightly, to warp, and in response to this, Sharpay expresses her concern and worry over the working class rising up. This is not what she wanted. This is not what she planned. She thought that she could ride the system to the top of the food chain, and that everyone would help to enforce it out of fear and tribalism, another big part of this song, as each person is basically shut down by their own tribe of people who presumably live in constant wariness of the others, a big part of dividing the working class. I think it is legitimately fascinating how the groups that these individuals who speak out belong to are at first warm and open to them revealing their secret, until their secret goes against the status quo, and they then proceed to shut them down and tell them to shut up. It's like this whole idea of woke capitalism, wherein it embodies the message and nature of community and working class identities and supporting them, while at the same time locking down actual and serious efforts to disrupt the system that plays a large part in fostering those very issues affecting the communities in the first place. But things start breaking down. This is what triggers Sharpay's whole musical piece in this song. The various groups, originally homogenous in their identity and separated, are mixing during the dance breakdown, are becoming intertwined, and that makes them a threat. Sharpay sings her piece as a way of getting things back in order. "We can do it," she says, in reference to shutting down this burgeoning revolution before she walks up to and intends to challenge Gabriella to her face about her role in this societal disruption, which ends with Gabriella slipping and throwing her, I think the like loaded nachos, onto Sharpay. They go up and they come down to the screaming of the ruling class. Now, I cannot express enough how much this is one of my favourite songs from the entire movie. I love it, and I love the style of it, the way that the dancing and the acting perfectly intertwines with the music. It's also a complete fucking banger, which helps a lot, and, you know, eat your heart out Lin-Manuel Miranda. Sorry to Lin-Manuel Miranda fans, I just don't like him very much, and I think High School Musical is better than anything he's ever done. You know, fuck Hamilton. And this is really the point where the allegory here becomes very obvious, becomes very much something that one can read into, and it only continues to build from this point as we move into our next song.
You're not a fairy tale, and dreams were meant for sleeping.
Now, there's a lot of plot that happens before this song, which is more of a lamentation of disaster befalling our working class. You see, factions within the working class, specifically Troy's best friend Chad and Gabriella's team captain / friend Taylor, both of whom come up with a plan to get them away from each other and to quieten this burgeoning wave of societal change by removing its figureheads from the singing competition and back into the basketball and scholastic worlds that they belong in. So, Troy is dragged into a situation where he's recorded saying a whole bunch of nasty stuff about how the audition and the singing and Gabriella are not a big deal to him, and then he's totally focused on the basketball. Basically, his group gang up on him and use peer pressure to try and force him back into the box that they are in, afraid of what he is doing to their team and their team's potential success. It's that continual tribal thing again from the tail end of Stick to the Status Quo, and Gabriella sees Troy doing this, as he's been recorded by a hidden webcam that leads her to think that she's been betrayed by her fellow revolutionary. Which, I mean, I'm sure we all have a few jokes about leftist infighting and the way that all those classic thought leaders back in the day would write no end of snappy little jibes about one another, or send a hired assassin to put an ice pick in the back of one of their other one's skulls. I mean, shit. Some things change, but that truly never does. So Gabriella sings her big solo song about the betrayal, about the way that she now feels as if miracles are impossible again, and that it was all just a dream or wishful thinking, and the cold, hard reality that comes with the working class being divided is truly hitting her in the face. It's like 1984 or some shit. I don't know, much like every right-winger ever. I've never actually read the book, but I'm sure it's a lot like it. Probably. But the whole intention here is, well, it's the end of the second act, and so we need some difficulty in the way of our protagonists. Some strife internally caused by forces that they're either aware of or even friendly towards, to do something that seemingly pulls them apart, so that we can then see them united in the triumphant finale that sweeps us up as an audience. Look, a lot of these stories are just the same thing over and over again, especially Disney Channel originals, and that's a fact. But what we see, though, from this betrayal is that both sides end up feeling betrayed in some way. Yeah, that's how betrayal works. As Troy doesn't really understand why Gabriella is suddenly distant and cold towards him. The divisiveness, a divisiveness that is not even pushed by Sharpay, by the capitalist ruling class or wannabe ruling class, as we shall get into with the next song, is in fact crafted by the very people in the same tier as them. The working class compatriots who have bought into the lie of the status quo as a way of assuring their own potential futures, who see singing as hurting their chances of obtaining that game victory or that decathlon win. So they hurt their friends in the name of advancement, a pretty capitalist thing to do if you ask me, but this backfires as we discover that more hours and wages not matching inflation and the precarious nature of the gig economy and the nightmare of the pandemic and the difficulty with obtaining reliable housing all lead to the workforce performing even worse, even though they are divided and not within the union, as you might want to call it. Oh yeah, the partnership of the proletariat in Gabriella and Troy, the union of those two in a romantic relationship, we can call that synonymous with real-life unions. That sounds pretty good. I'm sure we can swing that one logically. But they're both suffering from the pain of the status quo lashing back at them, and it doesn't make them better workers. It doesn't help their respective teams. In fact, they're more distracted and more unable to perform well. Success is not tied to isolation, is not tied to focusing on this, and finally their two tribes realise such a thing and reveal their duplicity to the parties involved, and offer to support them instead, seeing that their support could mean more than their opposition. Oh, and then Troy goes and gives a big old Romeo and Juliet style speech outside of a balcony or on a balcony, because of course this romance film has references to Romeo and Juliet as well. It's literally impossible to make a single bloody romance film about it these days, apparently, and they reconcile and commit even harder towards the singing, towards the revolution against that status quo that we keep mentioning over and over again. This time with the full backing of their respective communities to bolster them up. And that bolstering comes in the form of them giving them the time and ability to practice and rehearse, because another way in which capitalism restricts the worker is by reducing their ability to access the resources that would engage them or would let them change the system through eradicating all the forms of security that would offer them the space to do such a thing. Working communities, time and financial netting. It's hard to think beyond survival when surviving is all you can do. But this Act 3 still has one more little snag to work through. The snag of Sharpay, who has another iconic song.
Mucho gusto.
Ay, qué fabulosa!
Overhearing that Gabriella and Troy are going ahead with their plans to disrupt the system that benefits her, Sharpay talks to the whatever the hell Miss Darbus is these days, and organises to have the auditions during the big game and the decathlon tournament, hoping to remove her competition completely from the race, ensuring that only she obtained the singing/capital. We we did agree that music is the capital in this analogy, right? It's still the stupidest thing I've ever heard, but, you know, we gotta commit to it. But their informant on the inside of the machine, Kelsey, informs Troy and Gabriella of such a change, and so the two communities come together to work out a plan between them that will allow the revolution. I mean the callbacks to occur. Nuking the power in the gym during the game to get it delayed, and rescheduling the decathlon by causing some kind of chemical attack. One person's, the janitor probably, terrorism is truly another person's freedom fighting. And in this case, they are fighting for the freedom to seize the means of change, and of breaking free from the ruling class that dominate the musical scene, and have done so because that is how things have been for years. We then get to see Sharpay and Ryan perform their song, the song that epitomizes their attitude towards the whole idea of music and performance, and that also gives us an insight directly into who they are, reflecting those attitudes that I think one can recognise within the brutal billionaires that do whatever it takes to make wealth at the cost of their workers' lives and safety and happiness. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, they all bop 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 to the top.
Wipe away your inhibitions. Stop, stop, stop. Do the rock and strut yourself.
Literally, there are so many lines from this song that show us the mentality of the capitalist class who rule, and the mentality of the aspiring class who see their success and want to be like them. Sharpay and Ryan also dream as well. They also want to shoot for the stars like Gabriella and Troy, but their version of it involves kicking and scratching their way up the ladder of success, bumping off the competition and blowing them all away. Shake your ass, flash a smile, show some muscle, do whatever it takes, sell everything you have to make that hustle work. This is that Sigma grind set meme shit that everyone mocks, but is literally encouraged by the people who ascribe their wealth and power to the fact that they surely must have earned it by some means. Unable to recognise that getting to the top involved doing heinous things and stepping on a whole bunch of people and using their talent with a narcissistic disregard for any of it, because the only thing that mattered was achieving that goal of number one. A false goal, an impossible to ever reach goal that will always keep shifting and always keep demanding more and more. Eternal growth at the cost of everything and anything. Jump and hop, hop till you drop and start again. Zip zap zop, pop like a mop. Okay, I actually don't know what that has to do with anything, but the rest of the song absolutely does sell that image, does sell that concept of Sharpay and Ryan as representatives of such a group. Oh, and also, who can forget that she is literally climbing a golden ladder with Ryan during the end of the song, with her making sure to knock Ryan down a little bit, because this is honestly a game of those on top and the rest. This, of course, then gets contrasted with our next song, the song of our working class protagonists, which is almost a direct counterance in Breaking Free.
We're breaking free.
Our heroes then get up on the stage and are struggling a little bit to really get into it before all their communities, all their fellows in the working classes come together to support them, to uplift them and give them the strength to believe they're breaking free, they're soaring, flying. There's not a star in heaven that they can't reach. If they're trying, they're breaking free of their chains, like the oppressed workers of the world and the cliques that define the school hierarchy and keep them locked away from obtaining their dreams. Some pretty smooth writing from me there, huh? Putting the song into the video essay like that, just scooching it in. The essence of this song is in that idea of obtaining everything they could ever want, not by crushing others, not by kicking and scratching, but through that connection, through that feeling deep in their very soul that unifies them, the very ideal of unity. It's more than hope, more than faith. It's the truth that binds them together that ensures that this was going to happen, and it was only going to happen together. While the status quo might see them in a way that is different to who they are, our proletariat recognise their need to break free of those chains, to run and climb to the place where we can all be what we can be. Change is a wave that the ocean just cannot control. And yes, I have just repurposed the entire song and then moved it around to write this whole paragraph, because the song is kinda saying it all. This is the moment when things move from building towards the revolution, from budding class consciousness and awareness of each other and what is needed and how the system fails to appreciate and address the individuals. It is the breaking point when all groups have come together and announcing such a thing. Troy's father is watching from a distance, the representation of the team leader for the football tribe, the person who reminds him that a scholarship and security is linked to putting his head down and focusing. He's here because the bonds of family and the network of support is more important than his inability to perhaps understand this whole singing thing. Gabriella's mother is also here because of all that family shit I just said. And Miss Darbus, of course, ends up giving them the main role, even throwing away her little script during the song, a fun little reference to abandoning the current system. And at this point I've got no idea what Miss Darbus is meant to represent. I've called her a bunch of things, the capital, which is not really true because, you know, capital and capitalists anyway are Sharpay and Ryan, and the capital is singing. I called her the free hand of the market, but I don't know if that's true either. I think that was just convenient for that song in particular. I think what Miss Darbus really represents is society. Is the thing that has been defined by the system, who's been moved by this revolutionary movement to adjust and become different. They're not too different, of course, because Ryan and Sharpay are still understudies for the musical, which I guess is a representation of how certain groups during any changes are able to maneuver their way from one ruling position to another of still holding some power and access to that power. Yeah, sure, that can be what that means. Who's gonna argue? You? You can't. I can't hear you. This is a one-sided monologue, baby. Finally, here we are at the end. The working class has gone through the start of something new, seeing the possibility of change that could happen if they stopped forcing themselves to get ahead in the game, and ignoring those damn dreams and hopes. They found what they've been looking for, and what it isn't sticking to the status quo. Even through the betrayals and heartaches that come with the construction of this unified working class. Remembering when there was just me and you, they ignored the capitalist message of bopping their way to the top, and realised that they needed to break free, and that they are all in this together. All of the groups, from across the school, singing and dancing as one. Because while all those communities do exist, they belong together as well. Because they make each other strong through their differences. And that standing together hand in hand, they can achieve anything. With the shackles broken, with the revolution in swing, the working class has unified, and the finale is one that shows the great big party of that moment. Even Sharpay and Ryan, the previous symbols of the ruling/aspiring class, join in and recognise that all the people can be champions, can be number one without having to push each other down or ruin one another.
We're all here and speaking out with one voice. We're gonna rock the house.
A truce is declared between these warring factions, as the school is finally taken out of its hierarchical system that restricted many and left a few at the top due to their status, wealth and power. Instead, they are all on the same level. Well, except for the fact that the gym is tiered, I suppose, but they're all in the same crowd. It's not physically the same level, you get what I'm saying. And that's it. That's the High School Musical from start to end, explored in explicit socialist detail and message. A lot of time and effort to really push this point home and to argue for it. But am I even right? Is that even true? Is this even a good argument? Sure, I've made a lot of points for a socialist interpretation here. I've said a lot of things and made a lot of, links and backed them up with some kind of logic. But that doesn't mean that this is the truth. The fact of the matter is that this was an incredibly hard essay to write because the whole time I was thinking about the way that I could just as easily make this a queer thing. Because here's the facts, it could be that too. We discover our identities, start coming out of the closet with exploration during the start of something new. Before, no, we had to stick to the roles that we currently occupy, the stereotypes that define us with get your head in the game. Before seeing the two sides of what I've been looking for in the tacky, almost crafted for a cis-straight audience Sharpay and Ryan version, who would be examples of the kind of queers that happily throw others under the bus, and view their own identity as some kind of competition they can win only by becoming successful, and the honest, sincere affirmation of identity from Troy and Gabriella. Then, the rest of the school starts also questioning their identities, too. Revealing secrets about themselves because they've seen others do it, much to the fear and confusion of the cis-straights and stick to the status quo. Before, alas, alack, difficulty strikes this burgeoning queerdom as suspected betrayal and divisiveness tears them apart, and we reminisce about when it was a smaller and more controlled community in When There Was Me and You. We see the mentality of the pick-me queers on display in Bop to the Top, before our LGBTQs break free with the support of their communities, recognising that the world sees them differently to who they are, but that they recognise something in one another that unifies them. Finally, the queer community is all in this together, is reaching for the stars by uplifting one another, regardless of the differences that might divide them. Also, it's a musical, and those things are pretty fucking gay right off the bat. But within that, I hope you see my issue here. If you pick and choose the right moments, make the right arguments, and follow those threads to the end, you can kind of conclude that allegory too. You could kind of conclude any allegory with High School Musical. So, is this secret socialist messaging even right? Can I even claim such a thing with any level of sincerity or definitiveness? Well, no. At the end of the day, what I'm doing here is reading into this art, is picking a thesis beforehand, an end goal, and seeing if such a thing can be kind of accurate or convincing. If it convinces you, then it could be considered true for that particular audience interpretation. But if it doesn't convince you, then that can also be considered true for that audience interpretation. Ultimately, what it is a very simple story of high school romance, of being yourself and community, something that by its very uncomplicated nature allows for a lot of people to go super complex with it and try to insert whatever kind of ideas they want to. And that's just a fun thing to do, as long as you're aware that ultimately it's all just opinions. It's just the other side of that creative process, where half of it is what the artist puts into it or intends with it, but the other half is what the audience takes away or interprets. The conclusion here is that there is no way in hell that High School Musical, a Disney Channel original from 2006, was intended to be a socialist or queer masterpiece. But it's fun to think that it is, to try and read those themes into the more generic ones that it works with. And what's wrong with trying to have a little fun sometimes with art, with movies, on YouTube? I think we could try and do that every now and then without having to be a big serious discussion. It's just a silly thing. So that was the video, and I hope you enjoyed it, because if you didn't, I'm amazed you've got this far. Seriously, kudos if you hated this whole thing and you just kept going for like almost an hour. If you did enjoy it though, please consider giving it a like, share, subscribe, comment, or run out into the nearest public space and start singing Wildcats, sing along, yeah you really got it going on, Wildcats in the house, everybody say it now, Wildcats everywhere, wave your hands up in the air, that's the way we do it, let's get to it, time to show the world. That would really help the channel. If you super want to support me and would also like more riskier videos like this one, the best way to do it is by going to my Patreon and subscribing. The money from it is super helpful to ensure that I'm able to focus on YouTube, especially because sponsors and the platform itself are surprisingly not that receptive to the kind of content that I put out. Who would have figured? Nobody wanted an ad space on a video entitled The Secret Socialist Masterpiece of High School Musical, their loss. The names of those in the $5 and above category should be flying past the screen right now. And I've also promised to make a Q&A video comprised of questions by you, the audience, when the Patreon hits $1,000, or if it hits $1,000. If it never, then I don't have to ever make that video. Small wins, because then I can sort of accept that people might want to know things about me. Like, if people are willing to pay that much money to, help me do YouTube, then I can accept that people want to ask questions and I'll answer them. Other than all of that, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.